Dennis, you want to do the intro or should I?
Yeah, man, I haven't done one in a long time.
Hit it.
What is up, SMT community? Happy holiday weekend. It is a beautiful Sunday, September 3rd, and we have got the giants, the titans of the podcasting space on tonight. We got Zero Cool representing the pink thong. We got Moose representing the Death Star. We got Sneed representing Big Red. And then, of course, you got me, the spiciest chili head in the world, a mean, lean Italian coming in to bring some hot takes to entertain your joyous Sunday night. I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about because this was an impromptu emergency meeting called by Sneed, but I'm sure we will get right on into it and we'll have plenty to talk about.
All right, so I want to do fixed wireless access. I want to talk a little bit about the offers from the companies and the experiences that they're putting out there. I want to talk about specifically some of the consumer premise equipment, and then also on the RAN side, what's going on with the network. So I want to do the fixed wireless access, and then I think what I want to do is I actually want to open up the discussion to some of the SMT Nation. I want to pop the link in there, and I want to get some of the feedback from people about the 5G network upgrades that they're seeing with their experiences. So, like, say for example, like Verizon, the 5G ultra wideband, people that have seen the network get upgraded in their markets. How is that going? What has it done for them? Has it improved their network experience? So, I'm actually most intrigued and curious about AT&T upgrades. I want to hear people's experiences with the 5G Plus because I feel like Verizon's hitting the track running pretty hard. I've seen incredible build-outs from AT&T, but I don't know if that's the same for others. So I'm more intrigued about that. And of course, the N41 piece with T-Mobile, it's very mature. They've been doing it for 3-4 years now. Most people have seen some amazing, throughput enhancements and a much improved network experience. So to me, I want to hear it from the nation, what they're seeing, how they're using the networks, what their experiences are. But specifically, I kind of want to get feedback on AT&T, because it's been really good for me, but I don't know what it's like for everybody else, So that's kind of what I want to do with the show tonight, What do you guys think? Is that a good plan?
I think that you have a topic. I'm sure we'll get sidetracked somewhere along the way, but it sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Okay, so fixed wireless access, right? You got 3 carriers all doing it. They're all doing it in a different way. They're all doing it with a different set of parameters, different expectations. The cost is kind of all the same though, right? So like AT&T comes in at $55, $35 if you got their if you got the wireless service. T-Mobile's like $50-$55 with autopay. You got their higher end plans, they'll give it to you for like $35.
25.
Verizon, is it 25?
Yeah, they'll give it to you for 25. You have Magenta MAX.
Yeah, so well, you can't get Magenta MAX anymore.
Well, I mean, go 5G Plus, excuse me.
Okay, so they'll discount it to their most expensive plan. Verizon's like the same way. They'll give you a break. They'll cut you a discount if you got their wireless. It's 35 or 45, whatever. Straight up, it's like 50, 60, $70, whatever. So they're kind of all in this price range. And they treat the traffic different. They're all doing it different. I get the impression, based on the intel we have, AT&T's coming in with a QCI 9 for that traffic. T-Mobile's bottom of the totem pole traffic priority for their home internet. It literally is excess, so they're like, it's you're below everything else. And then Verizon has decided we're going to give all ultra wideband traffic, including home internet, QCI 7, right? And it's too early to say anything about AT&T, but we can kind of comment and speak on T-Mobile and Verizon. I've been using both services. I've used them both in the past. I'm currently using both. And we're seeing things that were like the worst case scenarios. We're seeing unreliability with T-Mobile with respect to inconsistency, I should say, right? So like throughput fluctuations are crazy. people are churning, right? They're trying it, then it gets worse, degrades over time. It really has become one of those things where if you've got an upgraded tower site with low traffic, it's great. And if you've got a tower, a sector that's become heavy usage, it becomes unbearable. And it's made some people even return the service. And I'm starting to see a concern on my home's tower site. And I made a video about it, and you guys are going to see the video tomorrow. But my concern was always going to be, how many users are they going to put on a sector, and how that usage was going to affect the output, or excuse me, the throughput on the sectors. So like Verizon, for example, 60 megahertz of N77 for the last year. We saw the speeds start to slow down a little bit. They were offset by upgrading circuits and densification and just grand scale upgrades, but they did slow, right? And Verizon was very clear. The expectation when you're on N77 should be about 200 to 300 megabits, which they've always been able to produce in my experience. Then they added more spectrum through the rest of the clearance of the C-band, and we saw a jump, right? But now we're seeing more and more people signing up for the service, even in situations where they have wireline options, which is crazy. I got to talk about this, Dennis. Why the hell are people taking the fixed wireless access when they have good wireline options?
You want me to answer right now?
Yeah.
I think there's two primary reasons, and they're very simple ones. Price, number one. And then I guess it shouldn't be understated to say, but convenience. By that, I mean, if you think about how traditional home internet works, right? Most times, right? You got to have a tech out. You got to do it at some inconvenient hours or windows, and you got to get it installed in some location in your house, which might not necessarily be like the ideal location. And for apartments, it might have some added complexities, dealing with landlords and stuff. Fixed wireless, you just plug it in, you download an app, bippity boppity, you got some internet, and the pricing, most importantly, is generally speaking cheap. Most people are probably getting it with their wireless provider, right? Because that would make the most logical sense. So they're probably paying the discounted rates, whether that be 25 with Verizon or T-Mobile or 35 with AT&T, and that's a very attractive price point in comparison to what your typical telco, your typical cable provider is coming in at, which usually their lowest plans are typically like $40, unless you're doing some additional bundled discount, and it's usually on some type of promo. Same thing for AT&T Fiber, right? It's usually, I think their cheapest plan is 40. And I just think that most people don't necessarily appreciate or understand what fiber does, and they'd rather just have the cheapest thing if it's good enough, and the ease of convenience. That's my take. Everyone's dead quiet, which scares me.
I want to get EM Tech in this one. So EM, why the hell are people choosing fixed wireless access when and if they have legitimate wireline options?
Hang tight. Give me like 5. I'm switching back to my desktop real quick.
Zero cool?
Sure.
You've been in the engineering realm. Talk to me.
Yeah, so here's my consensus, a couple points here on fixed wireless access. So the main points, what kind of Dennis said earlier, was due to price. The other thing that you had the huge advantage of and is mobility. You can take the home internet, fixed wireless access wherever you need. You're not really tied down to a fiber line or a cable line. You have the freedom to move. Okay. Now, my consensus on who's going to win this, for now, unless something changes, is going to be T-Mobile. And the reason why I say this is because they're not putting a hard cap as far as your throughput like Verizon is. You have access to, 160, 200 megabytes of spectrum, and what does Verizon do? Unless you're not on millimeter wave, God forbid, they're throttling you. That should not be. This is not how it's supposed to happen. Now, couple of things advantages that T-Mobile has is, for one, you can use the service as is. All right. Yes, they can upgrade your tower. Okay. Yes, eventually they'll get the white space licensing from the FCC. But also, they have shit. I just missed my last point. Basically, the advantages is there's no cap, so you have the freedom to move, you have the freedom to do what you want, and the price is right. So, I just think it's my opinion, like, a lot better. The service may not be that good in some areas that T-Mobile has, but it's the fixed wireless offering is solid in my point, and it's only going to get better for T-Mobile, right? They're always. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I remember my point I was going to make. The recent network slicing, right? Network slicing was never intended to be on an LTE network. It's not made for that. Okay. It's intended to 5G. Even though we have fake 5G in our, at least, you have T-Mobile has moved the majority of spectrum onto their 5G network, which makes, for a better experience, versus a Verizon fixed wireless, where we're still kind of piggybacking half and half on LTE, half and half on 5G, right? So, yes, C-band is great, but it doesn't do anybody any good, because we all know that C-band can go above a gig. So why cap it? Makes no sense. You can't do network slicing unless you move the spectrum over to 5G like T-Mobile has. So T-Mobile has advantages in that realm, which makes their fixed wireless offering even more attractive, especially at that price point. As soon as T-Mobile gets the white space licensing from the FCC, it's just going to make it that much more better. I see this temporary slowdown in capacity just as a speed bump. I see this as, everybody has capacity problems at some point at one time or another. I think this is just temporary. This is the game for them to win. They know how to market it, they know how to sell it, and it's priced correctly. So that's my consensus.
I will just real quick. I will just touch in regards to Verizon providing a speed cap. If they're going to do QCI 7, that is the logical decision to do. I think it makes a lot of sense for the mid-band frequency, because look, in Pittsburgh, right, there was an area that I mentioned specifically called Aliquippa, where that was the location, specifically one sector on that macro that was suffering from what I would define as congestion back when they only had 60 megahertz, right? It was dropping to 100, even 50 on UW. Now, having the extra spectrum on air alleviated that. It typically gets around 300, but for on-device use. But, add a few more people and you're going to have some problems if you're just relying on mid-band frequencies in the case of Verizon with their way that they're configuring the fixed wireless today. Verizon's pretty tapped out on mid-band, so they only have really 2, maybe 3 triggers that they can pull on. One is lower the QCI of the home internet product, which, giving it the higher QCI makes sense for how home internet use case is, and I don't necessarily disagree with the idea from like a home internet product and being able to guarantee some type of speed. The second option is to do millimeter wave, unironically for the mobile users that are out and about, because it'll probably have a hard time penetrating these MDUs that are being served in this specific instance. And the third option is just to continue to densify with more macros and more sectors and doing cell splits and things like that. But I don't necessarily disagree with the idea of Verizon limiting speeds. Like, I think that actually makes perfect sense, because if they didn't, the home internet use case is the type of use case where you would have instances of people just saturating that connection because you're going to be doing your big file downloads for Steam, for example, which will happily take even a gig if you threw it at it for, say, like a Steam download for however long the duration of that file download is. But I'll let someone else on the panel talk. I just wanted to.
Let me get the Moose in here. Moose, you got people taking to the fixed wireless access with legitimate wireline options at their address. What is going on, dog?
Yeah, so this happened actually to a buddy of mine where he was roped in at the Verizon store to get the C-band, right? Fixed wireless. When Call of Duty Patch Day came out, he was crawling at approximately 10 kilobits download speed. So he's like, this is unsustainable. And he was on Frontier Fiber. So originally he was, I guess, hooked on the price point. But unfortunately for his needs, it wouldn't work. So he switched back immediately and he went from 500 down on the fiber to over I think it was a gig and a half that he paid, or sorry, a gig that he was paying for. So clearly in that situation where, it's not like he couldn't pay more money. It's that he was interested in paying less money, but then he realized that his fiber setup is superior than dropping down in his area for fixed wireless. And by the way, this was prior to the upgraded C-band. However, his area doesn't have a site nearby. It's in like a suburban area, so it still wouldn't have helped his situation that dramatically.
I find it astonishing the willingness to go to a fixed wireless access provider from wireline options available. So like I explored every potential option. For example, I had Cox. They were so bad, anything was going to be better. And I was blessed to get the opportunity to get fiber, but prior to that I was running cellular connections. It was the only way to get it to work. But for the people that are choosing it based on price, I think that when the carriers increase pricing for fixed wireless access, do we all agree that that's probably going to happen here in the next 2 years? I feel like a 10% price increase I think that's likely. I think a 20% increase is possible. So a $50 price point, I think $55-$60 increase is definitely in the cards.
I would get it now for, don't get it later. I would get it now because it could be a price increase.
Well, I'm talking about with respect to the operators.
Yeah.
They're going to have to, in order to make this thing work better, they're going to have to sink more money into it. Each spectrum auction, for each cell split, for each 10 gig fiber circuit they have to finance, right?
So Sneed, do I see a price increase happening in the future? Sure, but not in the way that you're saying. This is what I see happening, realistically speaking, and I'm using traditional telco as my point of reference for why I'm drawing this conclusion. So if we look at traditional telco, right, typically speaking, the base entry plan, right, even if it has to be done by promo, it really hasn't changed all that much, right? Like you can still get $30 plans from Comcast, right? You can still get $40. Like that price point hasn't changed, and it's been like a decade. Like there's always been an entry level tier coming in at that point because that's what gets people calling. That's what gets people in the stores, right? That's your get them in there, right? But what did change over time in the case of, like, say, a Comcast is you started seeing things like an equipment rental get added, right? And that fee went up slowly. You started seeing things like the data cap in Central and out West, right? And different things like this that generated extra revenue. So in the case of like fixed wireless, what I see the logical path of things going down is basically 3 routes. Option A is literal speed tiers. So 50 meg for insert price. And that 50 meg might be what we see today as like the current like cheap price, $25. And they introduce some new speed tier, right? So option A is speed tiers, like different speed tiers. Option B, which I actually think is more likely, is just straight up data caps or data buckets. So like, i.e., for this price, T-Mobile will sell you, say, 500 gigs. And if you want more, you'll pay an extra 10 for every 50 gigs or 10 for every 100 gigs or something like that. Like they start charging you for the gigs, right? And then option C is, and I know people hate this, but I see promotions coming to the fixed wireless space. So like, i.e., come in at this price point for 2 years, and then it goes up to the more expensive prices that you're touching on, but getting rid of this whole price for life model that like T-Mobile and others have been like pitching, essentially, are the 3 avenues that I see it going down.
So I don't think the data buckets thing works, because T-Mobile tells us that they're selling fallow capacity. So that doesn't really.
But
that
they
would be
did it. But they already do it already. Like in the places where the T-Mobile Home Internet product isn't like, what do they call it? T-Mobile Home Internet Lite. I remember us talking about this. Like they're already testing the waters with that T-Mobile Home Internet Lite product, right? I don't think it'd be too far of a stretch to see them just incorporate that into their regular product. And maybe T-Mobile does a different approach. Maybe it is not selling excess capacity, but selling a guaranteed speed in the case of T-Mobile. But a Verizon sure might consider the data bucket idea.
my only resistance to that is they tell us that they don't build their network for fixed wireless with respect to capex. So if they're not putting capex to the network for fixed wireless, and they truly are selling fallow capacity, having arbitrary data caps doesn't line up with that.
Yeah, but in the same way, in the same way that Comcast has infinite bandwidth effectively and doesn't need to have data caps, but they had them on anyway because it was free revenue, I don't see the Verizon or T-Mobile, who are super ARPU focused right now, turning down another revenue stream, an easy revenue stream, right? Even if it is excess capacity, what loss do they have for having some?
So here's what happened with cable. Cable started selling people on data caps, or forcing the data cap, when they realized that 80% of their customer base was taking the lowest level plan, right? So when people moved up to get the premium tiers, they also were freed of any type of data cap. So that was very strategic on their part. There's a connection there. So it was a response to an ARPU play. Like, hey, oh yeah, sure, we'll get rid of your data cap. You just have to take the highest tier plan.
Yeah, but see, that's how it started though. But then they were like, no, data cap is on every plan. Now there's some providers that do what you're talking about, but Comcast, for example, data cap's the same across the board. Just across the board is the same. So anyway, continue, Sneed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Ian, let me get you in here, man. You got something to say, dog.
I don't know, man. I don't see data caps ever becoming a thing with fixed wireless. That's like kind of their whole marketing shtick right now. They see the pain points with DSL. They see the pain points with cable. I don't think either of the two FWA providers have any baseline expectation of penetrating mature fiber to the prem markets. So like the areas that they're hitting are areas where the customers are disgruntled. They have specific pain points, aka set up a data caps, exploding pricing, and it's a win for either of the two companies that are really competing in it. AT&T is doing AT&T things with their half-fast fixed wireless product, but like, they're not expecting to take over whole neighborhoods or whole cities with the product, really. Like, I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have. It was never designed to do that, but for some reason the narrative is pushed that way. So That's my 2 cents.
I think that while the expectation for them is not to take over whole cities, there is something to be said about the price point and the marketing that they're doing behind it, right? Like, they might say one thing, but their actions say another, right? Like, if you didn't want, I'll use T-Mobile as the example for this. If you didn't want to take over whole cities, right, then why would you send out and spend the marketing to send out flyers literally every week in the mail, blast TV ads and everything else about the product, and then try to get additional people to the point where, in the case of my neck of the woods, you got like literally 10 different T-Mobile home internet Wi-Fi connections showing up. Like,
that tells me one of two things: that either the take rate on the product is super low in your market, or the retention rate on the product is super low. So T-Mobile's clearly having a hard time either getting people in the door or keeping them. So they're going to just blast them with marketing over and over and over and seeing if they can get something to stick.
All indications are that T-Mobile's churn rate is pretty substantial with respect to people leaving, the service within the first couple of weeks.
I mean, I'm willing to believe that.
But that's a good thing, right? Like, if someone's gonna try the service, they should know it pretty quick. Like, oh, all right, this isn't cutting it, I'm out. Like that's a good evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to bet the trend's probably pretty high, considering that T-Mobile's not that great.
By the way, they don't report that as churn. They only report it as churn if you've had the service for multiple months.
Yep,
of course they do.
But I'm willing to bet the turnaround's pretty bad, because at least specifically at my location, T-Mobile's not that great. You're gonna get like 50.
But T-Mobile's okay with it. They're just throwing it out there. They're just putting out the bait, and if you take it and it works, great. If not, you just bring it back. There's no love lost, man.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying that what I'm trying to go back on and focus on is what Ian said, which is that the wireless providers don't want to take over a market. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that if they were able to take over a whole market and have every single person provide service, they would happily be on board with that.
How much mid-band spectrum and how many cell sites would a wireless provider have to have in order to take over a market for entire broadband?
Literally, it would be too many. But but I don't think that's the problem, right? You're looking at it from the consumer of, oh boy, the experience is gonna just suck. But if T-Mobile could get away with offering even like 10 meg to these people and they were still willing to buy it, I don't see T-Mobile batting an eye. Like, they don't care.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, is that the people's expectations of fixed wireless need to be tempered way. Exactly what I've been saying since the previous podcast, is that for a lot of people in the United States, a replacement to DSL is all they need.
Facts.
Yep.
And what I mean by a replacement to DSL is 100 Mbps max. That's it. That's all they need. Now,
where's my internet air to replace my DSL service, Moose?
So that's what I was gonna say, is that do you guys remember the beta trial period of Internet Air this summer, July?
Yeah.
Like June, July. They were very surgical in exactly which neighborhoods, prior to the C-band increase, by the way, they were going to give the migration from copper to Internet Air. That was
if I remember during the beta, didn't they do ProTech installs and they were like installing external antenna? Yeah.
Right. And then they moved to, the app tells you exactly where to point it in your house, right? It's like get as close to the northwest or whatever, right? But anyways, my point is that there's a reason why not every single C-band market was on the launch cities. And that's because, like, for example, El Paso, right? I was talking to Tyrone about this. His neighborhood literally has a sector looking directly at his neighborhood, right? If he does a speed test, once the C-band is turned on in that cell site, he's easily going to be getting a gig, no problem, on the down, right? Damn. No joke. Easily a gig on the down, because there's in that neighborhood, there's very few customers that number
Now,
one
Moose,
have an iPhone.
isn't he on like 25x3 DSL?
No, that actual address is on DSL 10, which is
Ooh.
crazy to me, right? But he has T-Mobile home internet right now. But my point is, though, there's not many folks in El Paso market that have an iPhone 12 or better to take full advantage of the C-band to the point where that gig is not going to be utilized that much. That's why that neighborhood is instantly going to be getting.
So you're saying all those
Yeah.
cats are on LTE phones?
A lot of folks that are on Cricket, that are on, all these MVNOs of AT&T, they probably don't have the latest devices. And what I mean by the latest devices, C-band capable devices.
Moose, I can help
That's
you out
right.
on this. I know a trusty, reliable source, Sneed, that pays closer attention to the prepaid space, and the average age of a device on the prepaid space is 3.5 years. That's how old the average age is.
So they'd be just getting into 5G phones here shortly.
Shortly.
Like within the next year.
But there's a key assumption here, Sneed. This assumes that whatever low-end phone or mid-range phone has the capabilities required.
That's right. I mean, if you guys think about, AT&T phones, the frequency and operability that has to deal with, their DoD, their regular C-band, and eventually in the future, like a 3.1, right? Versus, at a T-Mobile or a Verizon phone where your C-band is universal, right? It's going to be a lot harder for a AT&T customer to have access to good quality C-band with AT&T versus a Verizon customer who just recently upgraded their phone.
Never really thought about that, Moose. That demographic is interesting.
Yeah, so best case scenario, they'll have access to just straight up regular N77. Highly unlikely they'll have the DoD carrier ag for that prepaid customer.
Especially on prepaid. Now, here's the other thing, though, right? So this is generation 1 of the egg, right? Generation 1 of the egg, if you look into the firmware, it is able to carrier aggregate up to 3 5G bands, but it's able to actually carrier aggregate multiple bands, right? So when I was looking at it when I was at my parents' house, who, by the way, Sneed, that is the demographic in the beginning of the show, which is they have a fixed option spectrum, right? That was very good, right? The problem is that they are tired of paying, aka me. I'm tired of paying
$180.
Yeah, well, for the gig, it was $140, right? But I dropped it down to the bare minimum, which was still $79.99. So why would I be paying $79.99 if I could cut the bill in half to $35? No problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it goes back to an economic situation in that point. But going back to the egg thing, so egg generation 1, right, is going to be good probably for another 24 months. Okay, they might change it one more time, but it's good for another 24 months. I think that once you start seeing a lot of this 5G SA situation, which I've been seeing pop up now, like there's a couple cell sites south of me that have it turned on. I need to make sure that my S22 has the capabilities of seeing it. But, I can report back and see like, hey, yeah, this thing is actually performing, 10%, 15% better. I know we theorized, right, with Zero Cool on one of the live streams a couple years back, that as soon as you turn on SA, that's an instant throughput increase on the same spectrum. But, it's time to tell. Time will tell.
I mean, see, that's all dependent on how the RF is configured, right? How much spectrum do you have on 5G? What is the bandwidth? There's a lot of consideration for it. I mean, yeah,
Zero Cool, in my opinion, and you could tell me if you agree or disagree, because of fixed wireless access, every single provider needs to pick up a swath of spectrum every time something is auctioned.
That's the ideal world, right? But we can't really,
Come on, if 3.1 gets auctioned in 2 or 3 years, each carrier needs to walk away with 100 megahertz.
Right. No,
They're
I agree.
all doing fixed wireless access.
Yeah.
They need a dedicated fixed wireless access channel.
They do need to put more bandwidth to it, right? But we can't. It's the crux of it is that we can't. It's hard to predict saying, oh, okay, we need this or we need that. But this is why the carriers. This is why people in RF will plan out for 1 to 2 years just in case and say, oh, we didn't get these licenses in this area. Oh crap! What do we do? Okay, let's densify. Let's do cell splits. Let's do small cells. They make contingency plans just for that alone. That's what I've been doing. When I was at Verizon, so that's what I had to do.
Yeah, but densification. So we talk about densification, right? But I can tell you right now that densification is very, very hard to do in cities and suburbs, not because of cost, not because of backhaul, but because of just permitting, being allowed to even put the equipment in the place that you need it most.
It's tough in areas like San Francisco. And that's not true for like all major cities, though.
Well, Sneed, you remember a couple years back, you had a special article prepared for me about how AT&T whipped out the money bags to be able to deploy in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I wouldn't even call Pittsburgh one of the most stringent places, but they were pretty like anti small cells for AT&T until they whipped out the money bag.
Bro, we have seen, cities get pissed about the power, for powering the cells.
Yeah.
We've seen them get pissed about existing infrastructure versus new poles. We've seen them get pissed about buzzing sounds coming off of RAN gear. We've seen and heard it all, dude.
Yep.
We've seen people throwing rocks at Verizon technicians saying you're going to give our kids cancer. I mean, we have seen and heard it all, dude.
I think it's important to, if you're in one of these cities, to, really know who has the edge. Is it Verizon? Is it AT&T? Is your city carrier friendly?
Yeah, right.
Some cities are.
Most cities aren't, though.
Most big cities aren't. Some smaller cities like Stockton, Modesto, whatever. So, some of the smaller cities that say they let you build are good. It's hard to. Even with small cities, though, right? I mean, let me just say this: it's easier to plan for a small city, obviously, than a big city, especially when it has to do with spectrum. If in a big city, you have to plan out 2 to 3 times more capacity than a small city. Okay. But I mean, like Steve, what you're saying earlier, can the carriers win more spectrum? It's based on their ambition, their network build out, their plans, their budgets. But I think what T-Mobile has in like the fixed, it's. I want to kind of get you guys' comments on this. We see T-Mobile always being the first for something, the first to network slicing, the first to 5G, blah, blah, blah. You think, even though their CapEx isn't that great, but at least they have, the first for something. I think that kind of gives them an advantage, in areas like a fixed wireless or stuff like that. Not in all areas, but in some areas. I think there'll be hopefully, more, I don't even want to say this, but hopefully they'll be able to fix their problems faster than they create problems. But again, it's about how mature your network is.
I think that if we're talking about the carriers, who's going to have the most problems in the future with fixed wireless, number one is Verizon. Because Verizon's the only one that's doing QCI 7 based off what Sneed's saying.
Yep, I agree.
And that is going to pose immediate problems for their mobile customers. So Verizon has got the biggest YouTube friendly thing to their head when it comes to a need for spectrum and offloading that traffic that the home internet customers are generating. Verizon's being aggressive with mmWave, which is awesome, and that will help a lot, but it's not it's not keeping pace with the areas in which fixed wireless for Verizon seems to be picking up the most aggressively, and it shows.
But wait,
T-Mobile,
really quickly on that.
Mhm.
But the Verizon one is subject to change. There's no in writing that you have QCI 7.
Yeah, let me ask you guys this: you
No,
think
no,
that
it's
cap is going to change too?
it's programmed into the core, Moose. All ultra wideband traffic is there's an NR like QCI 7 for all ultra wideband traffic. I know a lot of people who have sit there, you know, they question it and they say it's not true. I don't know what to tell you guys, but when the engineers tell me it's a QCI 7, I don't argue. That's the way they've configured the network. If you don't like it, that's your problem.
Right.
All ultra wideband traffic is treated in its own QCI.
But what I'm saying,
it's in the core, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though is that is subject to change. They can change that at any time.
Sure, yeah.
Well, for right now, it's not changed.
What
Yeah,
about
but I
the
can't.
speed cap?
Moose,
QCIs aren't going to matter when they
I can't
introduce network slicing.
Sure, and I can't speculate on what they do down the line.
Right.
I'm just saying the way it is today, and there's no plans of it changing in the near future. Now, network slicing brings a whole new, you know, it opens up a whole new thing because it's not bound to any rules, right? When you create network slices, that is in and of itself its own QoS. It's not a QCI, but it does become a QoS, and those are two different things.
That's correct. I can explain that a little bit. So basically, when you network slice a particular area, let's say you have, I'm just trying to create something in a certain geographical region. Why? Because your capacity needs are not changing over time necessarily, but they're changing. It can be they're changing dynamically, right? So they're changing faster. Okay, so I think again what I said earlier, T-Mobile, you know, with their network slicing first has the upper hand in the FWA world. I wish Verizon would just.
Yeah, but hold on a second, Zero Cool. No one person is getting a network slice for their fixed wireless access address.
Well, hold on. Business enterprises will.
Okay, but I'm talking about a residential customer, someone who calls up T-Mobile and says, "Send me a home internet box." You're not getting a network slice. The people who are getting network slices are going to be small businesses and enterprise, and when you connect to their slice, you're on a slice.
Yeah, not the single customers, no. But what you can do with network slicing is say you can take about, let's say you have, I'm just going to throw some numbers at you. Let's say if you have, okay, in Northeast sector, I have 25 businesses, 100,000 customers, versus like on the Southwest, I only have maybe, 200 customers. Well, you can prioritize that still if you take a grouping of modems saying, oh, okay, this needs to be more capacity in this area for these residential modems here. That's coming down the line. It's not here yet, but you can take a grouping of modems as long as what's in that sector range, because you can plot out your azimuth that way. You can put them on a slice. It's not hard to do.
Well, what I was going to continue saying was that with how T-Mobile and AT&T are doing this currently with their solutions for fixed wireless, network slicing isn't really like a high priority item, I don't think, for them. Like, it doesn't need to be. It's QCI 9, it's bottom of the barrel. Fixed wireless isn't going to interrupt the mobile consumer. Verizon is the one that needs the network slicing, or they need to add much more capacity than they currently have access to.
I think it's a bold statement to assume that Verizon doesn't have any sort of network management in practice to prevent the mobile user from being impacted by their fixed wireless traffic. I just want to point that out. Like,
well, if all are on QCI 7, right? If the home internet customer and the mobile customer,
it's not QCI 7 though.
It's not black and white like that either.
It's an NR. It's an NR QCI. It's not, it has nothing to do with what's going on LTE. Therefore, it's not over the entire network. I would say that Verizon's ultra wideband is more like a network slice than it is a traditional QCI in that sense. Because what I've done is when I've tested side to side, I get the same throughput on the mobile that I get on the home internet. I can't distinguish the throughput. So I would say that the LTE and the nationwide 5G stuff, the QCI rules are followed there. It seems like the ultra wideband doesn't follow the traditional QCI parameters. It feels and behaves differently.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but you guys have to understand like the relationship between spectrum balances and QCI. They kind of go hand in hand. You know, you can't have let's have all the spectrum on 5G and have none
but
on
zero
LTE.
in and of itself, network slicing is not going to save the network from fixed wireless access.
That all depends on the bandwidth. You have to have enough bandwidth.
Okay, so the answer is the bandwidth. It's not the network slicing.
It's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say goes all like your QCI, your bandwidth, and your network slicing all goes hand in hand. You can't really have a great one without the other. You have to have
for network slicing to be really effectively utilized. All the carriers are going to need at minimum, and I'm talking minimum, 400 megahertz of sub 6 gigahertz spectrum to make effective use of the network slicing. If we're talking about trying to save like the home internet use case and provide like these experiences that we're talking about of like minimum 100 meg and stuff, like that is what would be needed to have enough spectrum for the commercial customer, have enough spectrum for the business customer, have enough spectrum for allocation for Internet of Things, subsetting the mobile customer, etc. I know that they can get crafty and do things like opening up a slice of network for insert amount of time until a session is done. And I know you can get crafty and try to be super efficient and effective, but it's still a capacity and spectrum question. And right now, with current mid-band networking, the carriers on average have about 140 megahertz to play with across the board. And that's not, it's a lot, but it's not a lot. Like, you know, if we talked a decade ago, we would have talked about how 20 megahertz was a crazy amount of LTE spectrum. And then we quickly learned how it wasn't that much. Right. And I think that 5G is the same way. Like 140 megahertz of midband, it's fantastic for mobile use and our current needs. It is not a lot when you think about the type of traffic that a home use case can generate on the network, because a home user doesn't even need to be home to be having consistent use, right? Like if I was on a fixed wireless connection right now, even when I'm not home, my security system with the video cameras that are in 4K is going to constantly be providing load. I might start up a bunch of downloads when I get ready to leave, and those will be going in the background while I'm not here. Meanwhile, I'm also going to be using my phone as I go ready to go. Maybe it's a big cloud backup to Google Drive. It's going to be constantly generating usage even when I'm not awake on the network, and that would just be me in this example. Like the levels of data consumption that a home user generates is just exponentially more than the mobile user, because the mobile user is typically going to be more active and engaged on their phone versus the more passive usage that just gets generated from a household.
I mean, think of it like this, guys. Think of your capacity, okay, is your bandwidth. Think of that as a fast car going down a highway. You can think of your QCI as management. So the management part is like the police officer making sure you go 55 miles per hour, okay? There's times in the highway where it's 70, right? Okay, so, I mean, you really have to have that control, the capacity as well, and bandwidth, right? So try not to like segregate it, between just QCI and bandwidth and capacity. A great network has everything. It has if this is why I don't understand like Verizon is doing what they're doing. I mean, I get it why from a business sense, why they're just managing it this way, but I don't agree with it. I think if they did it smartly, like T-Mobile, I think there's probably a way around it. But
I don't think it's about T-Mobile doing it smartly. I think they understand their limitations. I think what Verizon is trying to imply is that they're going to take this head on and just beat it. They're just and they did this with millimeter wave too.
Yeah,
They
they did. I just
they
don't agree with
they
it. That's
bullied
all.
their and that's fine. I mean, they bullied their way. They basically said, we feel this strongly about millimeter wave. Everybody laughed at them and said they don't know what the hell they're doing. And here we are today, and people are starting to understand that there are limits to this midband thing. I mean, we haven't even seen higher order MIMO in millimeter wave, and we're already seeing over 4 gigabits per second. So what happens when we start to see the higher order MIMO and the next generation of hardware for millimeter wave? We're going to start seeing 10 gigs.
Yeah, but what about for midband? You can make that same argument. So if we see,
But we don't have the spectrum, Zero Cool.
True. I'm just imagine if we do. Do you think?
But that's the one thing I don't think you're getting, though. I
No,
think
we're
we're
not.
more likely to. I think we're more likely to see 5 or 6 advances in millimeter wave tech before we get 400 megahertz of spectrum on midband, like Dennis was saying.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So I'm looking for that innovation. I think the answer lies in untapped frequencies, and I think the answer lies in better consumer premise equipment, because those are more realistic than having 3 or 4 more auctions in the next 5 years.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point.
No, but you see, the thing is that if you look at the shift, right? Once Verizon had the ability to put on an additional capacity layer like C-band, remember how we were talking about this? I still think, and I'm going to die on this hill, that Verizon's millimeter wave strategy was a temporary solution to fix their super congested network
So why don't they take it down?
No. They will never take anything down.
So then how is it temporary, Moose?
It was a temporary solution.
So what are they going to start taking down the nodes, Moose?
No. That's not what I mean by temporary solution. This is not like a cult or a cow that is going to go to a venue. I'm talking about.
But those would have been temporary, and those would have held up just fine, right?
The strategy was, let's go in with millimeter wave for X amount of time until we have something like C-band to then put on all the sites, because that's their strategy right now. Verizon is putting as many CBRS, C-band on sites that need it, right? That is a fact.
Think of like a Starbucks Wi-Fi pretty much at this point.
So then, Moose, why are they still building millimeter wave in Cleveland?
They're putting millimeter wave in Cleveland in area. I still think they're strategically putting millimeter wave in areas, yes. But to the amount that they were doing before, no way. They still have a significant amount of C-band sites that are missing.
Why is every carrier pivoting back towards millimeter wave in 2024? Answer me that.
Well, that's actually not 100% accurate. There's still the majority of the United States that needs C-band. Majority of sites in markets still don't have close to 80% of their sites with C-band. They have just enough to guarantee them that they can cover enough pops to say that, yes, this whole DMA, right? Or this whole city.
Hold on, Moose. Hold on, man. Verizon hit 225 million pops of C-band in like 13 or 14 months, dog. That's pretty impressive. I mean, AT&T just got to 175.
Again, where are we at with N41?
Approaching 300 million, probably by the end of the year.
Where do you think Verizon's going to slow down in C-band?
I mean, they already kind of have, but I mean, but it's not an issue with respect to the build. Eventually, it hits the point where it's ubiquitous across 90% of the space that their network occupies, and they've already been building. I mean, we've got new small cells in Cleveland, Moose, all over the place.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that they are not going to slow down on the small cell build. There's always going to be small cell.
There's new capacity builds. There's new rooftop sites. There's new millimeter wave. I'm not really. I don't think it's hard to sustain 15 to 17,000 millimeter wave nodes a year
in C-RAN only.
I don't know about that stipulation, but I think they can do that just fine because they were doing it before they got C-band.
I still think this is going to be the strategy in a very high interest rate market. Verizon's going to cut their capex. AT&T's definitely already been on record saying that this is the last year of intense capex. So you're going to see probably closer to 16 billion. I'm giving that like a good estimate of how much they're going to have in capex, only because what do you need to do right now if you're Verizon, right? Right now you're going to be continuing the C-RAN plan, right? You're going to be continuing the in-building solutions in different venues, et cetera, right? But your main priority is to get C-band in every single cell site that needs additional capacity boost, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's AT&T's strategy? They're going to be doing a significant amount of C-RAN, right? Because they have it, a machine to do that, right? That's their fiber folks, right? Wherever they put fiber, C-RAN is on deck pretty much within the year or within the next year. Then you have still the C-band, right? And I know that there's probably still 50% of the sites in any given market that still need C-band, including Detroit, including Cleveland. They still need C-band in most sites. And those are I would say, the higher end, most sites that have C-band from an AT&T perspective. So that's their priority, right? Is to make sure that those two things happen. Now, obviously, in the AT&T case, you have the fiber build that is. It seems like it's taking priority as priority number one versus wireless priority number two. So that's what I'm seeing is going to end up happening, right? Because you're right. Fixed wireless has a runway. We know that there is a plateau, but carriers are not even close to it. Now, what I do worry about is that if all 5G NR traffic for Verizon is on the same playing field, okay, then I think there will be two slices, one for mobile traffic and one for fixed wireless traffic in the very near future.
Well, it's going to have to be on an SA core. They're going to have to address latency, loaded pings, jitter. I mean, these are things that wireline networks can that do in a far superior fashion. I mean, there are a lot of people that are on any level of gaming that find fixed wireless inferior. I mean, Dennis will tell you,
Yeah, and
gamers aren't really thrilled about the loaded pings and the spikes.
yeah, and aside from the latency aspect, there's other aspects that are fundamental to the network that would have to change to be a true home internet replacement. If we're talking about gamers specifically, a big one, and this is a really big one for T-Mobile specifically, is NAT. So T-Mobile does double NAT type, which for a lot of games limits like the kind of lobbies you can search for if you can host and stuff like that, and they don't allow for port forwarding. Verizon's fixed wireless product at least does allow for port forwarding, which helps circumvent this, and I'm not super sure about the AT&T product because I haven't used it, but there are some fundamental things there, and with how the actual like packets of data get treated and the routing of said data gets treated, because a fixed wireless mobile data packet does not play the same way as a more traditional wireline solution. So yeah, there's going to be some things there to work out. Oh, and I guess I should also point out the IP addresses and how those get assigned will be another thing, because I'm sure you're aware specifically this impacts T-Mobile more than anybody that I'm aware of, but I know T-Mobile doesn't play nice with things like Hulu Live TV.
Yeah, they've got a strange geolock thing going on with the
It's how the IP addresses are assigned and how that works.
It's horrible. So like if you use Hulu Live, the T-Mobile home internet thing is not a go. You might have to go to like YouTube TV or something,
Right, but as more streaming platforms leverage this thing and the whole, because there's been a big crackdown on password sharing and the way they're implementing it as with Geo, that's something that the fixed wireless providers will have to ensure that they solve.
That, and I think also the providers of the content, the distributors, whatever. I think they're just going to have to learn to let people share at a fee. So just to streamline that process. Just continue, Dennis.
I mean, look, I agree with your sentiment, but what's more realistic? It's not going to be the content creators changing their strategy. It's going to have to be these fixed wireless providers supporting what the broader internet is doing of content creators or content platforms.
So let me ask you guys, everybody here on the panel, we all believe that fixed wireless access serves a purpose. It has a place. We want it to be the last resort or a competitor until a place can get a good fiber competition within their market, right? Like the best case scenario, the ideal situation is there are 2 fiber providers in your market, or at least 2 providers that offer a fiber-like experience. So can we look at fixed wireless access over midband the same way? A holdover until they get mmWave fixed wireless access? Because I'm making a prediction. The usage patterns on my home site for Verizon are so freaking high. I got 5 new Verizon wireless connections that I can visibly see on my phone when I'm in my family room. When I go run on the opposite side of the neighborhood, I see another 5. This is a neighborhood with AT&T Fiber and Cox Communications. I think it is 1 year away from getting a mmWave upgrade to just offload any of that traffic. And I'm talking fixed wireless and mobility. Because each time they've upgraded and added bandwidth to these sites, the usage has been soaked up. And I remember Moose told me about this when he worked at T-Mobile. And he said, Sneed, we upgraded a site in LA and it instantly became congested. And I couldn't believe it. If it wasn't Moose telling me it, I wouldn't believe it. Moose, share your sentiments about that experience.
So it was an area of Los Angeles that it had a hospital on the south side. It had a shopping center that was still being fully built out in the middle. There were all 3 sectors of a cell site, brand new, all the equipment, every single type of spectrum. And at the time, it had the highest amount of backhaul possible for that time period, which was at the time 1 gig, right? So this was 2016. So again, it instantly got congested. So that is, and I know Zero Cool, you're still here, and we can talk to this more. Hidden traffic is a real thing, right? Basically, what that means is that when you have a networking plan and you see that there's a gap in your network, right? So there's it's edge cell. You see a lot of connections that are dropping right there. You plan to put another cell site there. But what ends up happening is that you don't expect that cell site to get so congested so quick. Mind-blowing, man. How quickly, like literally, instantly congested.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like, you guys remember those commercials that have the crash test dummy and they just they hit the wall saying, oh, our vehicle's more crash proof or whatever, or more safety proof or whatever. It's kind of like that. You just hit a brick wall and you're like, oh crap, we didn't what they say, what it is you didn't build to capacity. That's pretty much what it comes down to. You got to meet capacity needs, and sometimes that does happen. Your site will be congested, and then you might have to build another site or 2 just to alleviate that, right? And sometimes that's the case. I mean, network planning is important. I mean, it's important to predict, 1 to 2 years out. If you do make an error, mistake, or lack of judgment or what have you, try to alleviate the problem, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not enough. It does happen.
See, this is that bullshit right here, Baby Yoda. He said, I would prefer fixed wireless more. It's always up. Xfinity always having outages near me. See, this is that bullshit. He has no option. An unreliable wireline provider is the same as having nothing. My brother literally called me about Rectum, and he told me he has to reset his box every day about 15 times. He drives to work, and all of a sudden his camera feed isn't working. And he has to use fixed wireless access because there is no other wireline operator there. He has no choice. These are some of the problems that we see, man. I mean, I can't blame my brother, Baby Yoda, for having to use fixed wireless, even though they have a wireline provider. If I only had Cox Communications, I'd be with a fixed wireless provider, no doubt. I might have two.
I pay for two ISPs because of that. My Spectrum fails over to my fixed wireless multiple times a day for extended periods of time. But I need the higher throughput on the cable, so I pay for both.
Yeah, Vivian says wireline should be more reliable than wireless, but wireline providers are negligent cheapskates. They have been, and I know that there are generally advantages to the wireline, but if the provider is not diligent in the maintenance, upkeep, and monitoring of their drops, of their pedestals, of their hubs, I mean, they create unnecessary problems. And I don't know, man. I think that these Verizon customers that I've been telling you guys about, my neighbors, I think that they're Cox transfers. And I think AT&T missed them. And I think the pricing matters, as Dennis alluded to, as a couple of you guys have as well. Verizon comes in and says $35. And they're just like, all right, let's see what happens. Can't be worse than Cox.
Right.
That was my experience when I was selling it. Can't be worse than what I already have, so let me try it.
I think it's important to have both, have both wireline and FWA for sure.
But I do find it alarming, Zero Cool, that I got 5 visible Wi-Fi connections from Verizon Home Internet in the last week.
Oh, of course.
And I got AT&T fiber. They literally just constructed within the last year or two.
Right.
Somebody's not effectively communicating the services to the market. You know what I'm saying? Like, something's wrong here, bro.
I mean, if you think about it, we're living in more of a mobility world, right? People want to have access to high speed when they go to the mall, the movie theater, out to eat, right? Well, at least I do. So you're looking at a huge, yes, people have to stream at home, but they really, really, really want that high-speed internet access when they're at a Super Bowl, when they're at a music concert, right? So it's really, this is why fixed wireless access is going to be more, prevalent as the years go on.
All right, Zero, let me ask you this. You're an engineer. You know RF better than anyone I know.
Mm-hmm.
Would you believe me if I told you that Verizon N77 off-peak, late night, early morning, will do 700 down and 80 up in my house? Would you believe me?
Yeah.
Now, would you believe me that during peak, during the middle of the week, it gets down to 190 megabits?
Like when a sector gets overloaded, it could jump to that crawling speed.
But Zero Cool, this just happened in the last week.
Yeah,
we went from 60 megahertz to 100 megahertz, right, in a week, and everything was fantastic.
Right, but this goes to the point I just said earlier. You're having more mobile people, more mobile traffic. Picture a bunch of people outside your house, or you know what I mean? Like,
Zero Cool, I'm not even joking. CBRS. If I put my phone into LTE, gets 300 down on my porch.
Yeah.
But I'll say this: Cleveland market still to this day has majority Verizon market share. Now they are losing significant amounts of market share per month, but majority of the customers in your neighborhood, Sneed, more than likely are Verizon customers. That's why they've been upsold this
To
fixed
bundle.
wireless thing, just like my buddy, right? So eventually, they're going to be there's going to be a time where they're going to experience, if they are like in a gaming family or whatever, right? Hypothetically, right, where the fixed wireless is not going to be enough, and thankfully, right, they have a fixed option, a fiber option in that neighborhood. But for the majority of people, they're not
Verizon,
going to care.
Verizon's losing significant market share.
Yes,
Can
they
can can,
are.
can we
Yes,
can we
they
can we
are. Oh
quantify that,
my
please?
God. Here we go.
All right. So
This
so
guy,
so
he
so
never
let's
believes
quantify
anything.
that.
He never
So
believes
so let's
anything.
quantify.
No. He
Let's
said quantify
let's
it.
quantify
He
that,
said
please.
give him a number. Give him a number.
In Cleveland, they are
Quantify that.
losing on average per month between 0.2 to 0.4% market share per month.
0.2 to 0.4
Per month.
Okay.
So you're
All
losing
right.
anywhere
So
between 2%, 2.4% per year, up to 4.8% per year at that rate.
Moose, what do you think the
last
cable
quarter.
conversion is on that cable?
Cox in that market?
No, I'm talking about like Spectrum.
Oh.
Spectrum's a player here, right? So
Yeah. So the MVNOs are taking a significant amount of share, right? Because people are getting savvy now. They're like, why am I going to be paying Verizon prices if I can just go to the cable MVNO that also has Verizon? So we're seeing that 0.2 to 0.4% market share. Some of it is going to T-Mobile, some of it is going to AT&T, but the majority is just going back to the cable MVNO.
Right.
I wouldn't call that significant. When we're talking about
this guy,
we're talking
look,
about last. We're
I'm
talking
not
about
going
we're talking about last quarter. We're
I'm
talking about
not
last
going
quarter.
to be
They lost.
insulted by facts here. These are facts. I have
That's not
seen them.
that's not a fact, though. I think what you're saying is a little bit of subjective. You're calling it significant when Verizon, on the consumer side, I think they lost a little over 100,000 customers nationwide, and they have 140 million plus customers. I wouldn't call that a significant amount of market share.
Those
And then
customers
what you said. Go ahead.
Those customers are going to the Spectrums and the Xfinity Mobiles of the world. It's a little bit of a loss to Verizon, but I will just say, to Moose's point, they're more worried about the mobile customer and not necessarily the fixed wireless customer. If you guys really want to know what these carriers think of fixed wireless, it's like the HBO Max to an AT&T. Like it's like that. It's they care so much more about a mobility customer than fixed wireless access, because they know people are depending on their phones. Right? When's the last time you say, oh crap, I lost my FWA box went down. I'm missing it. Oh geez, got to get a new one. No, you don't hear that. You hear, oh crap, my screen is cracked on my iPhone, right? So for profitability wise, they care more about the mobile customer. Now that could shift, but to me, I think they would have to take more of a bite out of cable, right, to have that happen.
Well, I'm certainly not in disagreement with anything that you just said, Zero Cool. I just take issue with the word significant when we know that Verizon reported losses in the consumer side of a little over 100,000. As a quarter, they gained, I think it was 8,000 new customers overall, including the business side. So I just take issue with the word significant amounts of market share when Verizon has over 140 million customers, and we're talking about a little over 100,000, lines of service that were lost last quarter. That's not what I would consider to be significant, especially when Moose was talking specifically about the Cleveland market, and you're talking about 0.2 to 0.4. I wouldn't necessarily call that significant. I think there is some pressure, but I just take issue with that particular adjective. I don't
Okay,
really
let me put
think
it
that
into
will be
context
significant.
because I'm very upset at the fact that it's essentially an insult when somebody doesn't acknowledge the facts. 0.1% market share in Cleveland is 7,443 people. Multiply that by 1 year, that's almost 90,000 people left Verizon. To give you a perspective that you can understand. Because clearly, 0.1, 0.2 doesn't mean anything until you put it into facts. Okay?
A perspective that I can understand.
Correct. Because 0.2 to 0.2, 0.1 to 0.2 means nothing until you put it into the factual population of Cleveland market. Because clearly, 0.1 to 0.2 doesn't mean that much, right? It's not significant enough for you, right?
What have the other big two done? What has T-Mobile done? What has, the AT&T done with respect to the shift? We know a little bit
Right.
are going to big cable, so where are the rest going?
Every 3 months, it seems like T-Mobile is gaining approximately 1.1 to 0.2%.
I know,
which is
it's
good.
horrible.
It's horrible, but it's better than nothing, right? It's positive, right? Because
I just take issue with the word significant. I wouldn't necessarily call that significant when you're talking about the largest carrier by customer count being
There's
at
not going to
140
be
over
the
140
He
million.
means nationally. He's talking nationally. That's what he's
They're
referencing.
not going to be the national carrier number 1 after 2028. It's already been statistically proven.
Oh shit! Moose is calling a shot. Oh
I'm calling
shit!
it right now.
Oh,
Okay, the math does not. You can't fuck with the math. The math is the math.
So
Okay.
pretty much. So I won't take issue with that either because 2028 is 5 years from now, and a lot can change during that time. But as of 2023, based on the information, I wouldn't necessarily call that significant. I just take issue with that particular adjective. That's all. But I don't want to insult anyone's. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. I certainly don't want to have mine insulted either. Just because I disagree. But it's okay. It is what it is. Good information.
I think we can agree if it'll be significant if Hans cannot afford any more Gator shoes. I mean, that'll be significant when he says, "Oh man,
Well,
oh no, what did we do? Raise prices again."
Well, we know that ain't gonna happen. It certainly ain't been that bad because he's getting those every quarter. It seems like
you got a
Hey,
fresh
Sneed.
every earnings.
Sneed.
Yeah.
Since it seems like we beat the fixed wireless topic like a dead horse, I know we had a nice, comfortable phone call earlier, and you wanted to talk about other things. Do you want to change topics to something fresh?
Man, pivot. Go ahead.
Well, as everyone who tuned in on Friday's stream knows, we talked about the new Verizon Ultimate plan. I am now the proud owner of said plan. I wanted to let you guys know some things that I learned publicly on the stream. One of the questions I had asked and we weren't sure about was what the new trade-in model looks like for Verizon on their more premium unlimited ultimate plan. And I found out the trade-in is the same as Unlimited Plus, caps out $1,000. Something else that I learned is that the 1080p is an 8 megabit per second throttle. Perfectly fine though. It fixed a lot of issues for me when it came to video streaming, but that is what the throttle is. I also learned that Verizon is including 500 minutes to a country of your choice to call each month, and the UW speed is still truly uncapped like it normally is. As far as the pricing goes, at least in my particular situation, assuming that I am to believe what Verizon showed me, I'm only paying $1 more for it. But I will say that getting that plan was a little arduous, to put it politely. Verizon's customer support is very complex when it comes to talking to Verizon Wireless and Fios, but I was able to get it done. And I made sure to record it because it was a little bit complicated working through.
Was it worth it? Was it worth it to switch
from Unlimited Plus to Unlimited Premium? Yeah. For me, it was worth it because my biggest gripe with Verizon was the video resolution. It went from me thinking, wow, Verizon's network fucking sucks, to wow, Verizon's network can be pretty decent.
Dennis, you doubled your streaming capability because you went from 4megfast.com to 8.
Yes, and it's not even just about. So I want to say what I said on the call. It's not about the video. Like, it's not about the video resolution. It's about the speed. It's about the speed, because anyone can benefit from an increased video speed. Like in the case of me, right? When I watch YouTube, I don't know about for others, but when I load up a YouTube video, I have YouTube Red or YouTube Premium, so I have no ads. So what I typically do is I'll load up the video, and your typical YouTuber will put in their little sponsor shot somewhere in between there and an ad, and I like to scrub past that real quick. On a 4 meg connection, I'll be buffering and having some issues, right? On 8 meg, I can do it and it just loads, and it's great. Things like Crunchyroll, which are not well optimized for constrained connections, on the previous plan would load up at like 144p. I'm talking potato quality, and it wouldn't be fun. Whereas with the 8 meg, it loads up appropriately. I'm assuming it's loading up at 720p or 1080p, whatever Crunchyroll is optimizing it for. It looks good. It loads good. It just plays. So it makes a difference in the video watching experience. Obviously, stuff like TikTok and your little short clips that aren't like, high quality and have lots of servers probably weren't having problems with the 4 meg throttle, but there was enough instances, at least for me, where that extra 4 meg makes the world a difference. Because at least in my circumstance with Verizon, there's enough times where I do hop off of ultra-wideband to their normal nationwide. So having that somewhat consistency is fantastic. And yeah.
So I wasn't like too privy on this, like the specifics of the plan. So I don't remember what the changes were, but so what is it? You could do 1080p all the time? Is that?
I'll sum it up for you.
Sure.
They increased the base video streaming resolution from 720 to 1080, no matter what you're connected to. Hotspot was increased from 30 to 60 gigs, and then they included 10 gigs of international data per month in like 210 countries, and then the global calling plus, which is like 500 minutes or something to a destination country of your choice, and then they increased the number of connected device discounts that you can get per line from 1 to 2. So like if you have multiple tablets, multiple hotspots, you get that 50% off discount on 2 devices instead of 1. And you get all that for an extra $10.
I think it's 4K on ultra wideband as well.
Yep, that's the same as the Plus though. Yeah.
I agree.
I recently updated my T-Mobile plan to the most expensive one, but I just
why?
Well, in case if my phone breaks, I can just get a new one.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Do it then. Do it then, not now. What, didn't you have Magenta MAX before this?
Yeah. Then I switched.
Yeah, Zero Cool, you're an idiot.
I switched.
You're an idiot.
I switched for the flight. No. I don't know. It seems Verizon. I think I'll just stick with my current Verizon plan. I can't really see myself upgrading to the.
What plan do
you have? Zero Cool. What do you have
for Verizon?
Yeah.
Get more?
No, I don't. I had the other one, the Go 5G Plus.
Oh, the newest one, the Plus.
Correct.
Oh, that's T-Mobile. What's the Verizon plan?
Oh, you're right. Not the one Dennis was talking
Unlimited
about,
Plus?
Yes, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan I had. I thought it was doo-doo.
It doesn't matter up where he lives. They don't have, no carrier has anything anyways.
Right, yeah, I don't know. I mean, video. Yeah,
get the unlimited ultimate plan, dude. I promise you, it's better.
What's the cost difference though?
Well, for me,
$10.
Well, for me, it was $1.
How'd you do that?
Because I got B's generous referral code, and then I got the home internet discount sorted, which was part of the archerousness, which adds another $10. And then I got the auto pay discount, and I got the $15 a month credit for activating my own iPhone for 36 months. And then, assuming that someone uses that referral link that I sent out yesterday, I'll have another $15 off, which will bring me actually down even further. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
I'm all about maximizing these discounts. So yeah, I got a screenshot of when I did the approval. I'll tell you exactly what I'm paying. Hold on, let me open up the Photos app. I am paying $62.02 per month for unlimited ultimate one line.
You know, if Verizon does another price increase on my legacy plan, I'll be switching to the new plan.
Honestly, Sneed, from what you told me about your old plan, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't switch to the new plan. Or are you
Yeah, I was
talking
about to say.
Are you
now
talking about
now
your
there's no
OG?
really big limitation.
There's really no reason to keep a legacy plan. Now let's just come in with like coochie. I mean, I don't know.
Well, right,
I don't know.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify. If Sneed's talking about his 2016 unlimited plan, then there's no reason to keep it, in my opinion. If you're talking about your OG plan with the unlimited hotspot, then yeah, you should still keep that.
I thought he had the 2017 one, but I might be wrong.
That's what I meant. 2017.
I'm pretty sure he's got the 110 plan. If he's got the 110 plan, there's really no point to keep it anymore because of the deprio on the LTE. Like,
exactly.
Not even.
I mean,
not even
Sneed,
worth it.
the newer plan kind of changed things, which makes me kind of want to challenge. You know what Moose was saying before about 5 years from now, the world's gonna change, and Verizon's no longer going to be the industry leader. But you know, it is what it is.
5G,
I love those kinds of predictions because that gets me fired up. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, AT&T's gonna leapfrog both of them in 5 years. Just you watch.
Yeah.
The company that put their C-band build at a dead stop.
Yeah, I'll take that bet any day.
That's what I want to talk about, Sneed.
Moose, you gonna take this blasphemy? Are you gonna take this blasphemy, bro?
No, it's not worth reacting to like Stephen A says. Folks that are clearly don't appreciate the facts, so it's all good. But I mean, say this,
I appreciate the facts, but I just don't appreciate the adjectives used when we're talking about point 2 to point 4. I don't appreciate that.
I'm not going to be responding anymore to the. I'm not going to be responding anymore to folks that can. How do I say this? Facts are facts, right? But clearly, not even the facts are good enough in 2023. So don't worry, it's all good. T-Mobile's going to take over by 2028 at the current rate, and this is underestimating too, so it's fine.
So Moose, you
track T-Mobile if the current rate continues.
Say that again, Sneed.
You the same thing B just said. You're tracking T-Mobile to continue on a tear through the next 5 years.
Yeah, when you factor in the fact that we have a significant amount of folks that are in the country from the southern border, right? And the first thing that they see when they get off of the buses is a Metro PCS or T-Mobile store. I mean, dude, that's straight up. Like, it's go to Huntington Park, California. Go to San Antonio. Go to Houston. I mean, man, everybody that I see that's coming off of those buses from Mexico is immediately get a SIM and a phone from Metro or T-Mobile, right? Location matters, and we've seen this since 2016, right? This is I
thought Cricket was the big player over there.
Cricket is getting speed too. I mean, so when we're talking about it from both a postpaid and prepaid standpoint, Verizon is losing on all fronts. They're not growing.
Yeah, T-Mobile is definitely going to become the number one in the near future. I do agree with Moose. As sad as it is going to be, I mean, look at their growth trajectory. They just keep on going up and up and up.
Yeah, but I'm okay with it. They got a lot of spectrum. They could support a big consumer base.
Yeah, T-Mobile, despite everything for Pittsburgh, still gets the highest peak speeds that I've seen.
So they have the highest median as well, I'm assuming.
Median means average, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do
you like that, Dennis? How does it make you feel?
I feel like the average for all of them hovers somewhere around 300. But if we're talking peak of the peaks, T-Mobile is the only one that I've seen get past a gig on mid-band.
Yes. Best point all day. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the fastest I've seen on T-Mobile was like 1.4 gigabits per second on mid-band. The fastest I've seen on AT&T was like 850, and the fastest I've seen on Verizon has still been around like 780.
Oh, they don't have any market share in Pittsburgh, so I mean they should be faster than the big two. So I mean I get it, but I mean I don't know. We'll see what happens. Just because T-Mobile leapfrogged AT&T doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do the same thing to Verizon. But you know we'll see what happens. Maybe the sky will fall. We'll see.
It's coming. The sky will fall. Hans will have to be forced to wear loafers instead of his
Oh
gaiters.
no, not the loafers.
Okay, it's happening.
I mean,
We'll see.
It's gonna
We'll see.
happen.
We'll see. I don't know.
I'm gonna just turn to talking about something different slightly. Sneed, I got an honest question for you, my friend. Do you want to talk about Dish and our conversation that we had about them earlier?
Yeah, yeah, man. There's a lot of different angles we could take on a conversation about Dish. You know, we could talk about Spectrum. We could talk about the situation with T-Mobile on a couple of different fronts. We could talk about their network build. What do you want to do, Dennis?
I want to talk about what I think regulators should have did, which you agreed with me on, with the idea that Dish should have had a network sharing agreement with a carrier.
Yeah, we really like the concept of network sharing. And the reason why I felt so strongly for it was sharing infrastructure as a resource can enable Dish to have access to locations that gets them to their pops so much faster.
Sharing is caring.
Right. And it's been done within other countries with success. But the thing about the US carriers, they distinguish themselves by their networks. So it's like they've never had to share anything before. You know, and I look at Dish and kind of where they come into the fold, and I look at regulators. The regulators don't know. Like the regulators don't understand technology. If there were tech savvy people within the regulations of the T-Mobile and Sprint merger, they would have mandated network sharing, like radio access network sharing, like radios, licenses, that entire puzzle that we've seen succeed in other countries. That could have been Dish. Dish brings their spectrum to the table. The radio configurations kind of come into play, and you have shared resources. It immediately brings Dish to their 70% pops covered, 75%, whatever within those markets. They get there so much easier. And then what do we have? A better fourth facilities-based provider. And then we have a more competitive marketplace. And then we have all spectrum on air. No more hoarding. But see, that's where I think we failed. We the thing that Dish needed, they didn't get, which was the opportunity to be on cell sites. And then instead of having to worry about the network, they would simply have to worry about retail, which is like the hardest thing ever to do, apparently, for Dish. Like they hit both marks, 30% and 70% of their network coverage requirements. They hit them both on the mark, but they can't do retail. This would have been their only focus had they have had shared access to infrastructure, and it would have just changed everything.
And the beautiful thing with shared access is that whoever the other person is, say if it was AT&T, they'd also have access to Dish's network in the cases where they needed it. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts though? Do you think that would have made the most sense for Dish, or do you guys have any counterpoints against that? Because Sneed kind of summed it up pretty well.
I think given the high level of privatization in this industry, it would have been very difficult to find a willing partner to take on that agreement.
Well, the partner would have been T-Mobile. That's the only way it would have worked. You want that merger? This is your end of the bargain.
I guess. I just don't. I mean, it should have happened that way, but
T-Mobile picked Dish.
oh yeah, I mean, this is just a classic T-Mobile getting whatever they want from regulators,
Exactly.
and then not having any sort of accountability or responsibility to their customers, to their business partners. I mean, it's par for the course for them. Like, I don't disagree with you guys. I'm just saying it would have been very hard for regulatory reasons to get something like that approved here.
So I thought that they had some sort of network sharing asset agreement with AT&T. Is that not
Roaming.
true?
They have a roaming
Roaming.
agreement.
So I mean that's the same sort of concept.
No. I'm talking radio access network sharing. I'm talking.
What's the physical stuff?
Who would agree to? Okay, so who would agree with that though? Like who would agree to that? I mean, how does that benefit AT&T or Verizon, for example? Especially if like this whole
T-Mobile.
Okay, so all right, I got you.
Network.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Because the regulators were tasked with one simple thing: we have to create merger components. We have to create stipulations that are going to enable a fourth carrier. They were hell bent on a fourth carrier, and they told T-Mobile, "Go get the fourth carrier." And T-Mobile said, "It's Dish. Now let's make it work." Yeah, so if you're hell bent on getting your merger and getting your 160 megahertz of N41, your 40 million subscribers, right? You want all those things, then you have to and they said you have to facilitate the fourth carrier. The DOJ, Makan Del Rahim, said you need to facilitate the fourth carrier. There you go. Give them access to your radio network.
And B, as far as how does it benefit the other provider, very simple. That 10 billion or so that Dish was going to spend for CapEx for their network build now gets to get combined with the other 10 billion that T-Mobile has in this example, made for a $20 billion build out for the network. And the cool thing is that they could do what they do in other places, like in South Korea, for example, where they only have two like actual networks that are both shared with each other, which is that you basically say Dish customers go on Dish spectrum first, but if there's excess capacity on T-Mobile's side or Dish is a little overrated, they could take advantage of the T-Mobile side of things. And then vice versa, if T-Mobile's having issues on their side, they could take advantage of the Dish side of things. It's like a very harmonious, non-parasitic relationship, which bolsters both. And of course, you get the additional benefits of extra spectrum assets on air and, not having to have, not redundancy. Redundancy is the wrong word. Not having to have duplicative efforts on backhaul. That's the right word. Yeah, not duplicative efforts for backhaul and things like that. Just simplifies the deployment process a lot.
Yeah, but I mean,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
You guys have to remember, why did T-Mobile pick Dish in the first place? Okay, because they knew that they would fail. Like, they have no market.
Not that they would just fail. Not that they would just fail. They knew that they could stomp them out.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah, but they have no marketing team. They have no stores. Their executives are leaving or been fired. Charlie is trying to secure money from a satellite company. Like, they knew that Charlie is what he is. He's a dumpster fire. Okay, it's just smart on the thing of T-Mobile. Imagine if they picked someone else. They could have picked Amazon. If they picked Amazon, that would be a big mistake for T-Mobile. Like, and what did Dish have to do? Partner with Amazon, right? So it's just as a lifeline. So they know Dish is gonna. I'll be surprised if they make it in the near future, along with U.S. Cellular, right? So, I don't know. I think Dish Network. I think Charlie he's his own worst enemy. He has done a lot of wrong things. He's trying to do some right things, but I think he does more wrong things than right things. I just don't see them being relevant in the near future. Aside from a Boost Infinite plan, I mean, what do you have to show for it? That was probably one of the best things he's done, but You know, I don't know.
Well, it's not like he was ever given a true opportunity to be successful anyway. To everything that you guys were saying, everything that you guys are saying. I mean, he hasn't really had the assets to truly compete anyway. He got kind of a crap deal. After hearing,
Of
Dennis and
course.
Sneed kind of explain their points. I mean, he got a crap deal. So I don't love beating up on Dish, but so much, including Charlie Ergen, just because he wasn't really given the tools to be successful. This was from day one kind of a crap deal. It was a situation where T-Mobile, only tapped them because they knew that they would fail, and they gave them, peanut butter and jelly, and pretty much asked them to build a steak dinner with peanut butter and jelly,
Yeah.
and that it's just not possible. So even if he was the smartest CEO in America, Steve Jobs type of intelligence, you still got to have assets. You still got to have cash flow, and this just hasn't had that. So I don't really think it's fair to beat up on him so much as it is to say, FCC regulators, why were you so hell bent on on allowing T-Mobile to be successful in the future? That's why I kind of don't necessarily respect all of this, growth from years past from T-Mobile, because they've had such a huge
Politics.
stimulus package to be successful, that to say that that's going to continue for the next 5 years at the same trajectory that it's been over the last five is wishful thinking, in my opinion, because now they have to play like the rest of the players play. And if they
Right.
do that and they continue to be successful, then more power to them. And I'll shut up. And 5 years from now, I'll say, hey, Moose was right. But now that the stimulus package is over, you're seeing other players come in and take their market share. You're seeing big cable come in and, really outcompete them, because it's easier to go, how low can you go when you don't have to manage an entire network? So they're being outcompeted for customers because they're not the cheapest anymore. In fact, they're the most expensive. And so as the market continues to be educated on what they're actually paying at T-Mobile and what they're getting compared to what you can get other places, I don't know if they're going to have the same trajectory of growth. It takes a while for people to be, educated the way that we are, for people to see, hey, these guys aren't the cheapest anymore. I know what the perception is. It takes a while to change perceptions in this country. It just takes a while. As much technology, as much information that people have access to, it takes a while to change people's minds on things.
But
So with
B,
that being said,
50% of
as
the
that
base
as
is
that
on a
process,
legacy plan, and they don't make them pay increased prices, so they just stay.
for
They
now,
don't.
I mean, we're talking about a
So
5 year
you're
prediction, for
expecting,
example.
right? So you're expecting eventually legacy plans get bumped up
No,
at
yeah.
I'm
T-Mobile.
expecting them to do. I'm expecting them to do the same thing the other carriers have done. Why wouldn't they? They're already like the most expensive, and they're getting away
That
with it.
seems
So
like
why
the one
wouldn't they
thing.
try to?
That seems like the one thing that they haven't done. Like everything else they've done, like they've added new fees, they've increased fees, they've created new plans that they added value to and made more expensive, and then took the value away from the old plans. So we've seen them basically do everything except raise legacy plan
They
pricing.
will. They will. And here's the thing, right?
Exactly. So
T-Mobile,
exactly, they will. So yeah, like what's
they
stopping them from doing it?
right, they will. And you guys have to remember, what has T-Mobile's whole strategy been before the merger? Oh, woe is me. I'm the small carrier. Verizon, AT&T are beating up on this. We need the merger to survive. Blah blah blah. Okay, now they got the merger through. Now it's like, oh, okay, we have this crap, dish company who we just want to stomp in the ground and then raise prices while we do it and elevate ourselves above AT&T and Verizon. The strategy is absolutely brilliant, no matter how much it sucks for the consumer. That's exactly what it is. And they exactly play it to the T every freaking time. They do it through their marketing. They do it through their sales. They do it through their retail agents. It's horrible. What is always the strategy? Bring your AT&T and Verizon phone to us. We'll lock it for you and put us on our network. Right? It's just it's as far as strategy execution goes, it's different from what Verizon's is, but they do it so much better. Maybe not the network part, but the actual marketing, the merger, we don't give a crap about Sprint, right? It's exactly what they're doing, and they do it. They do it the best out of anybody, and they're going to continue to do that until they're number one. That will happen.
Over the recent few years, I certainly agree Their
Yeah.
marketing has been stellar, absolutely. But I think they're finding it harder and harder as the days go by to find a marketing strategy that works. And that's the reason why they've resorted to simply increasing prices. So far, the market hasn't said, wait a minute, T-Mobile. They've continued to grow. So once they start to hit those legacy plans, and they will, to Zero Cool's point, I agree, they will. Once that starts to happen, I think that's when we start to see even more chinks in the armor, because they've already had multiple hacks, they've had multiple layoffs, they've had all these negative things, or at least what the market would consider to be negative things occur. How much more can the market take before they start to respond just like they did to any other carrier? I mean, they're not exempt. They're a corporation like the other two, right? It's not
Right.
like they care more about than, I mean, okay, so if that's the case and we all agree, then I'm just finding it tough to believe that 5 years from now they're just going to continue to grow hand over fist, and America's just going to say, "Hey, here's my butt, take it." I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. And so, as we
So
start to see greater and greater levels of parity between the three carriers with respect to how they do business, as far as increases of prices, as far as the priority being profitability, as we start to continue to see that, I mean, I don't know, man. 5 years from now, I find that hard to believe, especially when we
I'll
know
give you an
AT&T and
example.
Verizon will build better networks.
I'll give you an example. Look at their network slicing that they just announced. I can guarantee you they're going to have commercials out there pretty freaking soon. Like, oh, we have the best network splicing. Let us network slice your business. Let us network slice your enterprise. And guess what the price is going to be? Probably higher than what Verizon probably would ever charge. That's probably what's going to happen. I can guarantee you they're going to have some BS commercial that's going to have that on there. Or any new
So
stupid product that they might have. Yeah.
so by 2030, the current projection is that cable, right, as a Spectrum and Xfinity, will be at 10% market share by 2030.
Yep.
The rate that they are getting customers is accelerating every month, every quarter, every year. So that's why by 2030 we will see a very similar story to what I saw in South Korea back in 2018, 2019, which basically every carrier is at 30%, and then very little differentiation between the three in terms of speed. There's definitely differences in benefits because that's what they can control. But in terms of the network and the speed and all that, I mean, man, it's going to be very hard to differentiate. Like even right now, right, in the urban core, you have enough speed to do everything you need, right? But what's going to end up happening is that people are going to start being very savvy. If, for example, okay, it really depends on what happens politically in this country in the next 5 years, in the next 4 years, which would basically mean if there's the continuation of a democratic establishment, then we will continue seeing the high interest rate for a longer period of time, right? So if that is the case, right, the model would mean that people are going to continue being savvy, continue looking for other options, going from higher end plans to lower end plans, or going to MVNOs altogether, right? Because Spectrum is increasing their marketing. They're increasing their marketing to the point where anytime you call for a bill, anytime you look at your app, front and center Spectrum Mobile, every single time, right? Hey, let me tell you about how I can get you 2 lines for the price of 1. That's what was just pitched to me last month, right? So it's going to accelerate. It's going to continue happening. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, pricing definitely
They're-
matters. That's the biggest player. It's or I guess I should say the biggest component of the purchasing decision.
There are way too many factors, way too many variables for me to agree at this time. But yeah, you're right. We'll see.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and post the link for the StreamYard. If any of the SMT Nation wants to come through and join us on the panel, maybe you got smoke for the SMT, you got smoke for Dennis BP3. Any of the panel members, if you guys have any questions or comments you want to make, please do stop by and say hello and make your comment or ask a question. Maybe you want to share your experiences. I was asking earlier, how has the AT&T 5G Plus been for you all where you are whether in your travels or in your native market or the state that you frequent or whatever, tell me about it, because it's been great for me. But it's been, at least with the vibes I get from the nation within the videos and the comments, is I feel like more people are seeing the tangible gains on the Verizon side with C-band, and the T-Mobile gains have been well documented. We've been discussing it, testing it, seeing it for a few years now. But I feel like Ohio has been one of the places where AT&T has blossomed with 5G plus. I just don't know what it's been like for everyone else. They've scaled pretty nicely here. I don't know if that's the case across the US. So if you want to share those experiences or offer some comments, that would be great. And of course, it's not restricted to that. It's just something I was hoping to hear from you guys about, and we'll see how it goes.
I can give you my 2 cents on that right away.
Yeah, please do, Ian.
So I saw a very aggressive build out from AT&T in the first round of C-band, when they did their initial 3.7 build. It was very impressive. I was very happy with the initial, density and their ability to get it out just as fast as Verizon.
What was the network like before those upgrades?
It was solid enough. Like, I still had issues at home with indoor coverage specifically, and indoor coverage has always been a struggle with AT&T in my market for some reason.
Tower density?
Not even tower density. It's like, they put up these Wi-Fi pass points in areas where they know they have poor indoor coverage, and it just doesn't do them enough good. But with the additional upgrades with the 3.45, it's been very piecewise. It's been, not every site's getting it, and the expansion of the existing 3.7 footprint has all but come to a screeching halt. I'm not seeing any expansion outside of the original footprint that I saw initially, and it's kind of disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. It's like they ran out of money in the piggy bank and then just said, "Nope, we're done."
Damn. All right. Well, let me ask B. How's been Big Blue doing in your area, in your neck of the woods?
Well, this is New York City, so everybody does well. From a performance standpoint, Verizon still does better than everyone else, but AT&T is formidable. Even T-Mobile does decently well as well. So New York is pretty much take your pick. But nationally, I still think that there's a lot more meat on the bone. Again, for Verizon than I do T-Mobile. I think they're pretty much done with their network build. Of course, they're introducing network slicing, which is fine. So be it. But AT&T still has a lot more build left to do. They still have their small cell deployment. I'm hoping that they do. And also their 5G core. But Verizon also has those things as well. So I don't buy this whole network parity crap. I think that's a farce. I think that's what T-Mobile wants us to believe, but I still believe that there will be a good, better, best. 5, 6, 7, 8. Take your pick. Years from now, there will be a difference.
Hold on, man. They still got some DoD and C-band they got to build out. They got some
and that's true. Money? But with what money? They're competing with carriers that have
some free cash flow. Dog. They're starting to get it.
Yeah, but it's. Let's just be objective, Sneed. They're starting to get it, and they're competing with two companies that have had it for decades. And we're talking about over double the amount that they can spend versus T-Mobile. I think that I think sometimes we get so caught up in, they grew 500,000 lines when we don't take into consideration that like 60% of that growth was all free lines. It's not anything that's positively impacting their bottom line, and that's why they've begun to increase prices, and now they've begun to charge money for those free lines because they understand what I just said, which is that they're competing with companies. AT&T is spending $24 billion this year alone in capex. Verizon's spending like 2021, and then of course when they go down,
the norm capex now, so
that was what I was just about to say. but they're relaxing to 17 to 18 billion, not 9 to 10 like T-Mobile is. So there's going to be a differentiation in network performance between three carriers. This network parity crap, it's a lie. And I will say that to anybody who chooses to, retort that. I mean, it's a lie. You got two companies that are going to be spending. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just have one
Go ahead.
question that I'll ask again, as I did on the phone with you. When was the last time you tested AT&T or T-Mobile in your market, personally?
In New York, I haven't.
Okay. I would like you to test both AT&T and T-Mobile personally, and then draw a conclusion. Because I feel like if you do, you're going to quickly realize that the network difference between the three is so infinitesimally small that it really just comes down to plan and price.
Today?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I don't think that's an inaccurate statement to say today. But 2 out of 3 carriers are not finished with their build, and that's my point. So we're not comparing apples to apples just yet. We have one carrier in T-Mobile, which is a few years still ahead of the other two, and just about finished with the basic core of their network. So they got the core out, they got their radios out, they got the vast majority of their spectrum out. You can't really say that for AT&T, which still hasn't reached 200 million pops yet. You still can't say that for Verizon, which still has a bunch of meat left on the bone as well. They haven't finished their small cell build. They haven't finished their core. I just think that it's an exaggeration. Just because that may be that way today, Dennis, doesn't mean it's going to be that way 5 years from now. When we know that the two big carriers are going to spend precipitously more on their network than T-Mobile will. So there may be parity today. That doesn't mean that parity is going to remain. And that's my point. So when we start to see the differentiation between the customers, because between the customer experience with respect to network, that's when you start to ask the customer, okay, are you still willing to spend $90, $100 with this third carrier, as opposed to these other two, which are giving you a much better experience?
You know what's crazy?
I think the answer
We
to
still
that
don't
question
have
is going to
parity
be
in
no,
calling.
but not even
What I think-
close. And that's why
I think
it's
that's
hard.
alarming. I think that is outrageous that
I
in
didn't hear what you
2023
said,
we don't
Sneed.
have calling parity.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty wild.
And it's not even close. But we keep being sold this network parity thing, and it's crap. It's not true. It's not true.
So I live in a place to where people's doormats say, "Home is where the Wi-Fi is." Home is where the Wi-Fi is. So
I can attest. I can attest.
draw your own conclusions from that.
Wait,
take your Wi-Fi with
T-Mobile's
you.
absolute junk up there, though. They've only got 40 megahertz of N41.
Can I just address this comment real quick?
Yeah, man.
So Raging Dusty said, my band 13 in Willington, Connecticut outperformed AT&T's band 12 by a long shot. We are so far away from comparing low band nowadays. Like low band on any of the networks is
but the homie lives in Connecticut or Maine, dog.
I don't think people who live outside the big city understand how important, or people who live in big cities understand how important low band is.
Yeah,
in rural. It is quintessential.
I want some low band.
Hold on.
I would love some low band.
I literally just drove out into the middle of Egypt to go see my parents have steak. I'm talking an hour and some change driving.
That's not a far drive.
An hour and some change outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of the most densely populated areas of the country.
You know where BFE is there.
Hold on.
You're still talking about population density within the eastern seaboard that is not even comparable to where Zero Cool lives and where I live. Like, low band is quintessential to
my parents
coverage.
Live in a town with live in a zip code / town with less than 600 people in it. Yeah, I know what rural looks like. I know what low band's importance is. But even in their little like town in the middle of Egypt, the AT&T cell site was modernized and has the whole suite of bands. Now I'm not saying you could pick up on all of them, but it has the whole suite. Verizon has UW at their place, fantastic. T-Mobile has UC at their place, also fantastic. In fact, I was doing speed tests with all of them, and I was disappointed by my AT&T there because it's clear that the cell site that originally covered their house is no longer working at the time I visit because the RS was really bad. But look, I understand the importance of low band for covering rural, but in most circumstances, at least on the East Coast, let's call it the East Coast, it is very rare to only connect to low band anymore. For example, with Verizon, I always see band 13, band 66, the two. For AT&T, it's typically band 12 and band 2 is typically what I see if we're talking rural. And then for T-Mobile, it's typically like 71 plus band 2 is typically like the rural config, let's call it.
Okay, but you're talking about areas like where I travel to on a daily basis, where it's 13.5 only on Verizon and 12 only on AT&T because they have not hit those areas with FirstNet like they claim they have. And then you have T-Mobile either roaming on AT&T or it's 5 megahertz of band 71 only. Like there are areas where low band is the only thing you have.
Yeah, come to the UP, Dennis. Your perception will change.
Yes,
where?
it will.
The where?
It will.
Come to the Upper Michigan, to the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Your perception will change because I live in the land of trees. Well, there's nothing but trees, no towers, no nothing.
You realize that a big portion of Pennsylvania is nothing but national parks, right? Like, I just want to throw this out here.
No, I do, but the UP is so much worse.
It's larger. It's more sparsely populated. There is a total of what the population of the largest city in the UP is like 20,000.
Listen, when I used to go hunting back in 2015, I was seeing like band 13 and band 66.
Was that bow and arrow or was that slingshot? What were you using, Dennis?
I was using a 30-30 to go deer hunting with.
Oh, damn, son.
But I was seeing band 13 and like band something else back then on Verizon. I highly doubt that it's gotten worse than that. And
hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
We got our first guest, Blind Tech Adventures. What is going on, my friend?
Hey, how are you all doing?
Excellent, man. Thanks for stopping by and saying hello. And go ahead and talk to us. Tell us something.
Yeah, so at least so I've been an AT&T customer for a while. I like the Elite plan or the Premium plan personally, and the international coverage compared to the other two, you do have to pay for the data pass, but the coverage itself is so much better. The data speeds are better. It's definitely a lot better. There's no limitation, even just to go to Canada or Mexico, you use your full plan. There's no 5 gigs or 2 gigs or whatever nonsense. Yeah. But here in the States, by the way, AT&T also tends to cover Alaska a lot better than the other one.
Yeah,
lots of band 14 up there, right?
AT&T is the only one that has native coverage in Alaska.
Yeah, they have native coverage.
Yeah,
but here in the Bay Area, now where I live in the Bay Area, Verizon has got the most density, and it matters because they're all kind of bad. T-Mobile's starting to see some reasonable speeds, but T-Mobile call quality is awful. I have all of them, by the way. Their call quality is awful. They get more drop calls and choppy calls. Sometimes it's an HD call. Sometimes sounds like it's from, I don't know, 1965 or something. The AT&T is building up. They have their 5G plus their C-band, but they're trying to make the signal stretch as far as possible. And so there's a lot of areas where you're down to 1 bar and you might have a 5G plus signal, but maybe you're getting 5 or 10 megs down and 3 up, probably because of also congestion.
Might be that.
So Verizon at least has a bunch of cell spots, and they also have some a few dead areas. By the way, I'm in Bay Area, as I said, and so I think part of it is their permissions or lack of it to be able to build out, but it's or the amount of processes the government makes them go through. But out here, it's not like the AT&T's has some areas where they're really fast. They're reliable generally. Where you have data in service, it's reliable, and I'd say that for Verizon too. With T-Mobile, even if you have 5 bars, sometimes you've got a meg up, a meg down, or something, and it's just absolute garbage. But then other places you'll have 700-800 megs down, and it's great. So I don't know.
So there's a few things I want to dissect. For the 5G plus piece, I don't know if that was congestion. That was probably just bad RF. Mid-band in general.
Well, they definitely have congestion because, like I said, they're trying to stretch the signal as far as they can go on a tower that covers 100,000 people, or I don't know, a lot of people. So they're probably running into that as well. I mean, they've.
It's hard to draw that conclusion though, because you said it was only 1 bar, and we don't know what the RF or the sine are or the other.
I mean, I have that information. I'm just,
But let me put my 2 cents in here. Remember, I was telling you, Dennis, that the build out is like 50% complete in these cities. I agree that there's still a significant amount of sites that need upgrades.
Yep.
But,
yeah, there's a site that near the one that I connect to at my house, which I have no coverage with any of the carriers inside my house, but the one near my house is just got turned on 5G plus. So
there is a magical device that's called a cell booster that you can get on AT&T.com.
Yeah, I tried it, and the call quality is so terrible. I don't know. Again, maybe it's just that the having a hard time getting the signal, but the call quality is awful. So I just resort to Wi-Fi.
And you have to pay for it, which is also not great.
Oh, I paid for it. I bought the thing outright, and I just had such a terrible experience on the calling side that I gave up with it. I mean, generally AT&T calling is actually fairly good, a lot better than T-Mobile's calling.
No, I'm talking to Moose when he suggested the booster. I'm saying you have to pay for it, which makes
I mean,
it like
not everything in life is free. We're not in a communist society, So.
No, but I mean, if you wanna have a booster to fix your bad coverage, it should be free. Like a rental, like T-Mobile was doing. That was actually a smart thing. I don't think a customer should pay for fixing bad coverage.
Well, the other ridiculous thing about their boosters is, at least their cell spot is basically using my internet connection that I pay for to rebroadcast a signal, and there's not a way to restrict that signal, so only I'm using it. So someone else can hop on and use my bandwidth.
Right. That is something that in the previous MetroCell / microcell, right, you could go into the firmware and then put the exact, phone numbers, right, that would actually latch onto it. But to address Dennis's comment really quickly, I don't think that T-Mobile is going to do that ever again. I think they're going to charge. They're in an ARPU.
Of course they will.
I mean, T-Mobile.
Why would they give it away?
T-Mobile still has it available to this day without charge.
Their cell spots.
Yeah.
No, they charge for them.
No.
Yes,
Yeah,
they do.
And why wouldn't they?
They do charge for them currently. It's I can post the article here, but no, they charge for them. It's you have to pay them to get that sent to your house now.
If it's the security deposit they give back when you return it, then I wouldn't count that.
Well,
but anyway, going on. But it is because you get the money back. Anyway, going back to T-Mobile for a second on the topic of 5 bars. Blind Tech, what was the actual, what was the carrier ag on the phone? Because 5 bars of what? What was the carrier ag? If you have it,
it doesn't matter. I can get 5G UC. I can get, and I'm looking at Signal, whatever it is, Signal Check Pro, and I can get 85 dBm. I mean,
that's pretty good.
Reasonable signal, but I don't know what is congestion or just really bad configuration. Still get 1 meg down. Maybe the upload is usually higher. The upload's usually 10 up or something.
That sounds like a messed up RF configuration to me.
There's a number of those here.
So it's an intra-cell carrier aggregation from another site, C-band site further away.
It could be a number of things.
Well, this is for T-Mobile he's talking about, not a.
I see that a lot from T-Mobile. AT&T doesn't usually dip that low, but they just have areas where they're just generally very low signal, low RF. So it's they're kind of trying to stretch their signal.
Yep.
T-Mobile seems to have 5 bars everywhere. It's just that 5 bars everywhere doesn't really mean good data.
But that's the carrier that's supposed to grow and be the largest in 5 years. Man, whatever. Okay.
Well,
Hey, B,
we'll
B,
see.
I got a new one for you, B. $100.
oh no.
Yeah, $100, man. $100.
You know,
I believe it. I believe it when I see it. I believe when I see it.
Blind Tech Adventures,
gonna
are you aware
take,
of the $100 plan that T-Mobile has?
You know, I'm aware of it, and it really is infuriating to me because they used to do have a similar thing with their jump. That was the whole thing when they were doing the uncarriers.
Jump on demand program, right?
On jumps and on jump on demands.
Yeah.
AT&T does the AT&T Next. By the way, they charge $6 a month for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a common thing. These carriers do this, but AT&T or T-Mobile jumps in and says, "Yep, we'll let you do this, and we'll charge you $20 extra a month for it. Whatever the new plan is, $100 a month."
Yeah. So what I think is there's a technique to this. There's like a strategy. If you charge a fee as an add-on, right? It's like a fee. The customer may or may not keep it long term, but when it's built into a plan, the customer takes the plan, and that's the cost of the plan as long as they're on the plan. And
you're charging double or triple what other carriers charge for it, right? Yeah, I mean it's definitely about making that money.
Sure, yeah. It's a ARPU power move.
This is actually a good conversation here, Blind. Let me ask you this: do you believe that Verizon is going to get into this type of game where, the need for a 12-month or maybe every year and a half upgrade cycle is necessary? Ask is because
I'm not sure. I don't think that many customers use it. I think there are some power, users. I know I've used it. I used to use it a lot, and now I've just started paying for phones outright. But it's like, I think there are some people who want to do that, but I don't know. I think a lot of people do tend to hang on to their phones for 2, 3, 4 or more years, and as long as the phone's working okay.
Right.
I don't know how much. I mean, they have incentive to do it financially. Maybe it makes them some money, but I'm just not sure what percentage of users actually will do this.
And then let me ask you this: would you consider yourself a power user?
I would. Yeah.
Okay, so then you technically are like the under 5% of the market then, because I would assume these moves, especially T-Mobile, is for the general mass, right? But here's the other thing that's really interesting. What do you guys think is the percentage of the society or whatever, your population, that actually upgrades every year? That's an interesting stat.
The percentage of the population in the U.S.?
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I had to take a gander, I'm going to say it's probably less than 10%.
So 30,000. Wait, hold on. 388 million, 10%. So 38 million people every year upgrade their phone.
I said less than 10%, so that would be like the peak. Sure, that'd be like the height of it.
Less than 38 million. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, I say it's interesting because if you think about these upgrade rates that the carriers publish right on their earnings calls, the max that you've seen is like 5.8% have upgraded, every quarter. So that's very low. Wouldn't you say?
I mean, upgrade traffic has decreased. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very low. So I don't think it's even like 10 million. I really don't, man.
This phone just keep on getting more expensive and more expensive.
Well, I think it's a low number, but also the phones are holding up better. So they are getting more expensive, but they're lasting longer. And generally, phone manufacturers are providing longer periods of windows of software upgrades. And
yeah,
I agree. I think the phones are being made much better.
Actually, I don't think they're being made much better. I think they're being made much worse. I think what's happening is the upgrade cycle is long because the installment process is long. The installments are going over 36 months at Verizon, at AT&T, and the option has always been there at T-Mobile recently too, but even 2 years, right? And people are still holding on to them, because it's another bill.
I don't know, for the majority of what users do on their phones, I mean, even go back to an S20 or something is still meeting most people's needs.
Yeah.
Or an iPhone 11 or iPhone 12 or whatever it is. I mean, those are still more than adequate for the majority of users.
But blind
Yeah,
tech,
the battery maybe. I mean, but then you get a battery
hard to
replaced,
say.
and that is that. I mean, it's
well, if you're able to get that right, and you're willing to, like, some people don't even do it; they just hold on to it with poor battery life.
Yep. So hold on to it with poor battery life. Some of them will go out and get external batteries or battery cases, but I don't know.
Yeah, with T-Mobile now, you can upgrade your phone every 6 months. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I don't think they did anything new. They already had the jump on demand. I don't know. Maybe they got rid of it and now they're reinstating it and making it full, extra add-on for the plan. I have no idea.
Well, I always thought, like, when the remember when they started marketing, uncarrier, we're gonna unlock freedom. We'll unlock your phone and come to our network. I'm like,
frankly, that's bullshit. This whole thing in the States, internationally, phones are unlocked. You buy a phone, it's unlocked. And here,
but the
they already have all your information. Yeah. They already have your credit info. They already have your social security number. They're really good at leaking it, in fact.
Yeah.
And yet,
T-Mobile,
they lock the phone. Yeah.
Well, the part there with the whole, like, the freedom, whatever, that phone thing, is they trade you a locked phone for a locked phone.
Right.
They're just like, hey, you're with AT&T locked for 3 years. Come to us, bring your locked phone, and we'll lock you on our shit with our locked phones.
And that is one thing I think Verizon has done better. Although, again, I call bullshit on them locking a phone for 60 days even. I mean, I don't see any reason why they need to be doing that.
It's for security reasons. And that's it. It's just for security reasons.
I don't understand the security reasons. I work in the industry. I don't understand it. I mean, you go buy a phone, you can go buy one from Best Buy and activate it on any network unlocked.
They no damn security reasons. It's bullshit.
They just want you to stay on T-Mobile. That's the main reason, right?
They just want you to wear whatever color thong they want to push.
Exactly.
So here's an interesting stat. Do you guys think that U.S. carriers sell more phones than Apple or less phones than Apple directly? The OEM. So Samsung directly, Google directly, Apple directly.
Apple definitely sells. Yeah.
So that's the perception, right? But actually,
I think that the carriers sell more, like a lot of Apple's phones. Like the carriers are selling. If the question is, do the carriers sell more phones than the OEMs? The carriers definitely sell the majority of the phones, but Apple does sell a lot of phones directly, but most of them go through the carrier.
No, exactly. That's the perception, right? Is that, oh yeah, there's like these massive lines at Apple every year, right? We're coming up on the latest, iteration.
Is that still a thing?
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, every year on
does that clockwork. Still happen?
Yes.
Yep.
Every year, clockwork. Every single phone store is literally a line in the morning because everybody wants to get the phone, but the pro models are not going to be in stock. They're only going to have the bare minimum model, right? Like last year was the 14, and the 14 Plus was in stock, but the pros were not. That's exactly what's going to happen this year again. It's already been announced, right, by multiple leakers. Then the Apple Store is going to be the only store that is going to have the pro models. Why? Because they want you to buy the accessories there and all the other stuff, right? They can upsell you. Same thing with, John Donovan days back in AT&T 2017. He literally said on record, I am not going to allow AT&T to sell on Amazon because I want people to be able to come to our stores. That was literally what he said. So, I mean, it's all about controlling the flow of traffic, right? If you can get them into a store, you can upsell them on stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole uncarrier, I think the FCC or the FTC, whoever it is, that need to start cracking down on that. I mean, they're talking about uncarrier this, uncarrier that, but now a senior walks into the store and wants to pay their bill. Oh, boom, charge him. Charge whatever it is amount of money.
Good stuff.
Fee after fee after fee after fee. I mean, I've always supported T-Mobile. I like, so the underdog is worth supporting. I always want to see them grow. I always want to see them build.
But how do you say those same things today, though? Right.
Right. That's not
Exactly.
I think these conversations ended a couple of years ago.
Right.
Yeah. Good commentary, Blind Tech Adventures. Thanks for coming on and sharing your
Thank you all.
comments with us. Appreciate you, man. We're gonna bounce out the show. Great discussion, good points, man. Great call. Come in and give us those things. Big shout out to Moose, Zero Cool, B. We had EM Tech. We had Dennis earlier. Big salute to you guys. Big shout out to Ryan. Let me see. Vivian, Rage and Dusty. I'm trying to see who else was added. Jay, appreciate you. Those were all the new members. But a big shout out to all the previous members, existing members, and all the Patreon supporters for making content on the channel possible. Stuff's getting rough out here in these YouTube streets, man. It's starting to get really tough to create high quality content based on what's going on with the YouTubes, man. They are not playing nicely with creators, man. It's starting to hurt. So if you guys can continue to support your creators, ways to support us specifically are down in the description. Thank you guys for all that you do. Like, share, and subscribe for more. And of course, make sure your bell notification is turned on so you know when we upload videos and we go live here on the channel. I got a bunch of comment coming. Stay tuned for more. And we out this piece.
Peace.